Key litigation in recent years now governs and influences your testimony and your contribution to any case. To begin with, no one will hire you unless you have the appropriate experience and credentials. To ensure that your expert report and testimony will then be acceptable, everything you submit has to be both correct and complete. In the 1993 Supreme Court case, Daubert versus Merrill Dow Pharmaceuticals, Justice Blackmun said for the unanimous court that an expert's testimony has to rest on a reliable foundation and has to be relevant to the task at hand. He brought up the key consideration about whether the theory or technique used can be or has been tested and subjected to what he called peer review, as well as publication. So a key tactic nowadays is that expert witnesses have seen their work rejected at times and their testimony excluded if they haven't attended to Daubert standards of peer review. If you are a specialist, you should be able to identify another specialist in your field that the court can treat as a peer. So if you are a biomedical engineer, another biomedical engineer would be a peer. If you are a doctor that specializes in neuroscience, then another doctor that specializes also in neuroscience would be a peer. If you are a computer forensic specialist, then obviously another qualified computer forensic specialist would also be a peer. You have to consider ways to make it likely that the court will accept your report and testimony. To do this, you can find a peer who your attorney can retain to review your work and specifically review your expert report. In your expert report, then, you can provide a summary of your findings along with the detailed foundations of your research and analysis that led to your opinions. A peer reviewer would provide his own report of findings regarding the content of your expert report. Yes, this may sound like double work, but an increasingly important and valuable extra step. If another expert independently verifies the validity of your work, it will help to ensure the legal admissibility of that work. In addition, this extra step can bring extra credibility to your own work. This will further support the relevancy and the reliability of your work, your opinion, and your testimony. Naturally, you have to consult with your attorney to make the ultimate decision about whether your work product will require a peer review. Nowadays, such a step is probably the right thing to do. The earlier you have this discussion about whether a peer review will be appropriate, the sooner you and the law firm can begin the search for an appropriate person to fill that role. Sometimes a peer review is called a third-party review because the other party may not be a precise peer, but may still be a specialist in a related field of expertise. You should use such a third-party reviewer if part of your testimony includes information that is close to, but not specifically, part of your primary expertise. For example, you may be an automotive design engineer whose testimony has to do with the cause of a crash, perhaps pointing to a faulty transmission linkage. Suppose that part of your analysis points to material weakness in one transmission component. You may want to have your report reviewed by a third party who is an expert in the construction of the components used in a transmission. He may be more qualified to speak to the strengths and weaknesses of the specific materials used in the linkage component of the transmission. Even though you may know these things and have based your opinions on them, this peer review may strengthen the opinion that you include in your report and later present at trial. A peer reviewer's report will generally include his own tests, his own analyses, and a list of any assumptions that he made, along with error rates and finally his own independent opinions. That peer reviewer should submit the report directly to the law firm that engaged both you and that person. Generally, your attorney will submit your expert report along with the peer reviewer's report and a separate CV that contains the peer reviewer's background, training, and skills. You should not have any contact with this peer reviewer after the law firm retains him and before he submits his report back to them.